we're at today. Let me pray. Lord, thank you for this day and for so many days that we can look back at, and because of that, we know we can look forward to many more. We thank you for that, and we thank you for coming and teaching us, and for Matthew for writing it down. And so I pray that you would speak to me and through me today, that you would use these words to set the tone for Bluffs as we move forward. Well, where am I at? Yes, I do. I always wonder if I have the right passage. Here we are in Matthew 7. Or is it 8? Matthew 8, sorry. Matthew 8. When he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him, and behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him. Do I have the right slides? Look at that. I do. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I will be clean. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, see that you say nothing to anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them. The story continues. When he entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I, too, am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes. And to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. So as you know, this is quite a few more verses that we typically cover through this series. But as I was thinking about today and then looking ahead in Matthew, I felt like these passages, these stories are really helpful to us and maybe set the tone. And they actually kind of connect the things we talked about from the very beginning, and I'll get to that. But let me just kind of go through. There's going to be a lot that we won't get to this morning, but just to make sense of what I'm thinking. Lepers were dangerous and to be avoided. When you read the word leper or leprosy, it's just kind of a catch-all word for any other kind of skin disease, but they were risky. They were dangerous. They were gross. Right? They're hard to be around and highly contagious. So you didn't associate with lepers, and you definitely didn't touch them. To be near them was to risk contracting their disease. You'd be treated like a pariah. That word I just learned is actually connected to the idea of untouchables, like in Hindu cultures. Uncasted, unhuman. In cultures where there are untouchables, those folks have less rights than dogs. Stray dogs can enter temples, but untouchables cannot. That's what a leper was. You wouldn't hang out with the leper. If you have leprosy, your peers would make the logical conclusion that you were cursed or your family was cursed, right? You are inheriting. You have done something wrong or your family has done something wrong, so this is justice. This is who you are. But Jesus was different. And modern medicine owes much to stories like this because Christians follow Jesus' example. They associated with the lepers, with the worst, the most dangerous, the ickiest of society. Jesus reached out and he touched the leper. He touched the other. He touched the cursed. And he touched the forgotten and the misunderstood. He touched the disfigured. Centurions were oppressors. They're the enemy. When you read centurion in the Bible, in the New Testament, you should most often think of a police officer. Because there wasn't those categories. So the centurions held a multitude of roles, and one was essentially what we would call a police officer or a cop. But they were ever present, and they were symbols of Roman power and possession. They are the enemy. They're also a reminder, always in your face, of what it was to be. Am I cutting out a little bit? Sorry. They're a reminder of what Israel was and what it was meant to be. So to see a centurion was to maybe make you scared, maybe stand up straight, or as you all do, slow down a couple miles an hour, right? Just in case. Not me, of course, because I am the pastor, right? And but other people. So to see a centurion was to be a little scared and to be a little sad, to be mournful. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And is there any hope? A centurion would also cause you to question God's faithfulness, like we talked about and sang about. The essence of his hope. Does he really love Israel or not? Has he chosen us or not? Does he remember us or not? Does he have a plan and a purpose for us or not? Was it all some sort of sick, sad joke that was great for a while and now is just over? But what about all the prophets? Were they right? Should we change how we interpret them to kind of fit the current context? What does this mean? The centurion brings all that to mind. And they were also pagan. So they believed in multiple gods and worshiping Caesar. So to see them and to know that they have authority over you is to mean that your God, your way of worshiping, isn't the only way to do this, and their way of worshiping seems to be working better, right? They have all the power, all the resources. They were culturally and religiously other. You had to interact with them, but you did it as little as possible. The Jews were separate from the Romans, and the Romans would be fine. As long as you don't cause trouble, we're okay. Do what you want. So here, the Roman centurion goes to Jesus and asks for help. The centurion has all of Rome's power and wisdom and might behind him, and he goes to Jesus. We think of Jesus as a big deal, but he was just up and coming then. Sure, something's different about him, but what is he? What can he do? Who is he? He certainly doesn't represent bags of cash. There's some stories floating around. The centurion goes to Jesus and he asks for help, for healing. This would have been very confusing and troubling to Jesus' followers. Is this some sort of trap or trick? Is he trying to get Jesus to say something wrong so we can arrest him and maybe have him executed? What's going on here? Tables are symbols of hospitality. We don't talk about hospitality. I know we've got Waco, Texas, and we used to have Martha Stewart before she went to prison, things like that. But we don't talk about hospitality the way would have been normal in this culture. Yeah, it took a moment. We don't talk about it. It isn't that kind of cultural value like it is in the Middle East, in the place and time of Jesus' life as this is happening. Tables were very significant. If you've been to our home and seen our table, this was an idea of Michelle's. The verse that was at the end of the slideshow and is at the end of this, I think we actually used the one from Luke back then, which includes north and south as well as east and west. This idea of table became really important to us. We knew we were going to be homeless. We would have a place to meet, but it wouldn't be ours. And so we began to picture Bluffs not happening in a church building, but at tables around the cross. People gathering over food and sharing stories, sharing victories and sharing sadnesses, hopes and fears and all of that. The table is significant. So we had a friend who's a talented guy. He made our table for us, a guy from Real Life Church, and many of you have signed your name into it. Your names are engraved. And part of the vision is, should we at some point have our own facility with a wall big enough, maybe that table goes on the wall as another symbol of God's faithfulness and presence. We'll see if we can afford to buy a table to replace it at that point, but that's the idea, right? Is remember the table. Remember the people who have sat at this table. The people who were there from the beginning. Tables were important. We value hospitality and celebration in this church. I can't tell you how many times we'll be talking about an upcoming service, some kind of day, and Michelle is like, how can we turn that into a party? That's usually not on my mind, in case you were wondering. That would be a profound difference between us. But that's biblical too, isn't it? There are feasts and celebrations throughout the Bible, reminders like get together, go to table, eat a lot, celebrate what God has done, who he is, and which means it reminds you of what he's going to do. It gives you hope for the future. It's where we gather and we share food and stories. It's where we come together as equals. This was a profound difference in the new church. As Jesus passes the torch to his disciples, they begin planting churches throughout the region. You had slaves, which was still a cultural reality, and slave owners. You had aristocrats. You had very poor men and women and children. Some of those categories are property outside the doors, but inside the doors, we're equals, and we sit at table, and we share our resources. We come together at table. For Jews, the table was to be shared with other Jews. But for Jesus, the table was to be shared with others. People who are others, who are other, people who are different. Lepers and centurions and on and on. Sure, he went first to the Jews, but in his gospel to the Jews, he says things like, people will come from east and west. People will come from all over. People who are different from you. As we move into this next era of Bluffs Community Church, let's have this be our guide and mission and vision. In both of these stories, Jesus is where people are. It used to be a lot easier to plant a church. You kind of get a building, put up a sign, and people come in. And when they were troubled, they would come to the pastor or the priest and say, I need counsel, I need wisdom, I need help. It was easier to do it just a few decades ago. But for lots of reasons, some of which are the fault of Christians and the easy now. People don't just walk in the doors generally. But Jesus didn't build a building off the beaten path. He went to where people are. So we see that in both of these stories. This is why we do things like Serve Sundays and 30 for Freedom and the Riverfest outreach, which you'll begin hearing about soon. We want to go to where people are. We want to be a church that goes to and reaches out to the other, which means some of us, maybe all of us on some level, in some way, need to get over ourselves, right? Be a little bit more like Jesus and go to people who are very different, people who we think are icky, people we think are weird, people who we're afraid of. Jesus went to all those kinds of people, and he's our model. So let's let these stories guide us. Let's be the kind of church that goes to and reaches out to the other. And let's be the kind of church where people come to get healing. A couple weeks ago, we talked about one of the motifs of atonement is going from sick to being healthy, going from unwell to being well. Jesus, and the words like health and salvation, wellness, they rhyme and they're similar. Let's be the kind of church where people say, that's a safe place. I want to go to them and tell them what's wrong. Tell them where I'm sick. Tell them where I need help. So we go to people and we make ourselves become the kinds of people where people feel safe coming to and saying, I'm unwell in this way. Will you pray for me? Let's be the kind of church that welcomes people to the table. I'm very excited about today. This is a major milestone, and it is an honor to share it with this. I'm assuming that 96% attendance of members is not something we should assume for every meeting going forward. This is pretty amazing. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for those who are members. Thank you to Justin, Annie, and Amber, who will be our first deacons. That means a lot to us, to all of us. You are going to help lead this church. But I am well aware that becoming a general council church, becoming autonomous and having deacons and members and established, recognized pastors and all that does not guarantee that we will fulfill the mission that we've been given. This is important and it's good, but this doesn't answer all those questions. Instead, as we've been talking, we need to decide to hear and do the teachings of Jesus, which means we need to be the kind of church that goes to places that are uncomfortable so we can be around people that make us uncomfortable so that they too can find the healing that we've received, which means it costs us something, but the rewards are amazing. As the kingdom begins to grow, the table looks like Jesus talked about it. People from east and west and north and south, lepers and centurions, all levels of society coming together as equals to share in what Jesus has done, who he is, to tell stories, to encourage, to celebrate, to mourn and lament. All of that, we come to the table to do that. When I picture that, when I read the stories of how Jesus describes the kingdom, it's a party, so Michelle's right. And a lot of it is at table. The kingdom is a banquet. Let's come together. All of us weirdos. And you're all weirdos, right? We all are. Let's come together and celebrate and enjoy. And in the meantime, let's remind each other of what God has done in and through us and celebrate what he's going to do. Worship team, if you want to come up. We're going to sing one more song. We're going to sing Great Is Thy Faithfulness. Letitia asked a week or so ago for suggestions of songs, and I tried to be really helpful, and she rejected all my ideas. Actually, she threatened to do them, which was the better play. The theme has been faithfulness, and that is something we experience and also we hope for, we trust, we have faith in, which means it's unseen sometimes, right? And so let's proclaim that. Let's encourage that in one another. Let's sing that. Prayer team, if you want to go to the prayer room, you can go back there and get ready. Let's sing this last song.